Hello, everybody. Greeting and welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you are. I'm Dr. Mark, the CEO of Info OBE, and I would like to welcome you to these keynote sessions. First, let me introduce Professor K.K. Aggarwal, the keynote speaker. Now, Professor Aggarwal, a chairman of the National Board of Accreditation (NBA) of India. He's an engineer, a professor, and an eminent IT expert. Now, Professor Aggarwal has been associated with NBA in various capacities since inception and was chairman of EEAC before taking over as chairman of NBA in January 2019. Now, he was a founder and vice chancellor of the Guru Gobind Singh Intraprastha University. Now, he served as the president of the Computer Society of India for the period 2007 to 2009 and held the position of Vice President of Southeast Asia Regional Computer Confederations for 2008 to 2009, and then as a president for 2009 to 2010. Now, Professor K.K. Aggarwal obtained his engineering degree from Punjab University and his master from Guru Satra University. And he did his PhD in reliability, evaluation, and optimization, also from the Guru Satra University. In 1975, he rose to the status of a full professor at the age of 27 and a half years. Realizing he's the youngest person in the world that has achieved such level of achievement. He also served on the board of governors, IIT Patna, a member of the UPSC committee on restructuring IAA preliminary examinations, and also a member of the HRD, Task Force on Faculty Availability in Higher Education Institutions, and perform appraisal of teachers. Now, he has been president of the Institute of Electronics and Telecommunication Engineers, IETE, for 2002 to 2004. He also served as sectional president in the India for the IT and CS sections in the India Science Congress Associations. Now, he has been elected as president for the Computer Society of India for 2007 to 2008 and re-elected for 2008 to 2009. Now, Professor Aggarwal has also been elected as the Vice President of Southeast Asia Regional Computer Confederations for 2008 and 2009. Now is President for 2009 and 2010. Now, Professor Aggarwal did not confine his contribution to the academia field alone, and also powerfully impacted the industrial world. He delivered lectures to several industrial organizations and conducted programs for many critical industrial houses, such as Tata Consultancy Services, BHEL, TYX Electronics, DCM Data System, Central Mechanical Engineering Research Institute, Electronics Corporation of India, DEL, ISRO, and Defense Research Lab, and so much more. And Professor Aggarwal has written a few books, and many of articles have appeared in several books published by IEEE of USA. Now, the India International Friendship Society awarded him Lifetime Achievement Medal. The Broadcast Engineering Society of India honored him by conferring honorary fellowship on him in February 2001. And the Computer Society of India conferred the fellowship on him in 2003. Now, there's so much more I can say about Professor K.K. Aggarwal's achievement, but it's nothing beats listening to him in person. So it's truly a great honor for me to introduce him to all of you to address the topic outcome-based education in the practical perspective. Let's welcome Professor K.K.
Aggarwal. Thank you, Matt, for a nice introduction. It's a pleasure to be a part of this great conference being organized by this international network for OBE. What really excites me to be a part of this is that the founder of this international network is Professor William Spady himself, who is the father of outcome-based education in the whole world. And way back in 1978, he introduced the term outcome-based education. And since then, many countries in the world have adopted it to various degrees and are proceeding well in that direction. Friends, in India, we formally adopted outcome-based education more than a decade ago in NBA, when we were assigned the responsibility of accrediting programs in India in engineering, architecture, management, and pharmacy. And we also opted to become a member of the Washington Accord. So once we took these two decisions, outcome-based education became really a sort of must for us. Number one, Washington Accord mandated it. Number two, by then it was realized that the only effective method of education which can really deliver at the end of the day is outcome-based education. Because the moment you talk about student-centric and all that, well, student-centric has no meaning unless you go to outcome-based education. Because what does student-centric means? Interest of the student being served. And in the interest of student can be served only and only when you are focusing on outcome-based education, not on the processes and inputs alone. Although no denial to the fact that the inputs and processes will determine outcome, but it's a question of the focus. And the focus has to be an outcome-based education. We adopted it in India, in NBA, and now, of course, other accrediting agencies in India, several universities, and even school education system have started adopting it in various measures. And we do believe that pretty soon we will be a country almost on the outcome-based education for everything. Friends, outcome-based education, as I said, outcome-based education, as I said,
camera is on.
Is requiring us to define the outcomes expected of a student after graduation and then work backwards as how he or she can achieve those, how the system can enable those to be achieved. And therefore, in outcome-based education, we always go with what are the expected attributes from the student after graduation and then work backwards. And in the process, ensure that the attributes which we list are achieved by the student concerned and in the institution concerned by most of the students. And we find that several institutions in our country have already adopted it. Almost all good technical institutions are today accredited, what we call as Tier 1, which means OBE certified. Friends, OBE is in India started with engineering formally, but that does not mean OBE did not exist earlier. We had, even in India, practices like martial arts, where it will be decided that whether you are a blue belt or a green belt or red belt, now that is outcome, and outcome was decided. Similarly, outcome was more defined in music, outcome was more defined in dance, outcome was more defined in activities like NCC, outcome was more defined in sports, but outcome was less defined in academic world, and that is where we have started. And we started with engineering, and as I say, now we are becoming all pervasive in all disciplines, including. I personally find, although it's a common myth with many people, that outcome-based education is more amenable for quantitative or numerical or logic-based subjects. Yes, it is, but it's equally applicable for other subjects, as I have given some examples already in that direction. And I would also like to mention here that Professor Spady himself was not a science student who introduced outcome-based education. And he introduced it in the school level, not at the university level to begin with. So therefore, outcome-based education today must find its way at all levels of education in all countries for the interest of all the students enrolling for various courses. Having said this, friends, as many of you may be aware, India has taken up a new national education policy, which was adopted in 2020, about 2 years ago. And we are on path to implementation in a very speedy manner. Friends, national education policy, which India has adopted formally, characterizes certain pillars. Outcome-based education is one of the strong pillars of outcome-based education. But in addition to outcome-based education, we have focus on quality, we have focus on multidisciplinary education, we have focus on innovation, creativity, communication skills, flexibility, etc., etc. Why I'm trying to say all these words in this session is because ultimately outcome-based education, to my mind, is connected with all these things. If a student wishes to learn A and B and C together, there must be a method to enable that. And that is where we need flexibility. And that is where we need students to take courses from various universities at the same time. And therefore, our national policy today enables real outcome-based education where practically every student should be able to design his or her own degrees. It will take time. Things are challenging, but we are working strongly in that direction and moving steadily. We hope we will be able to achieve that. Friends, when I say outcome-based education, I believe we have to define the input behavior of the student and the outcome expected, which could be listed in the form of graduate attributes, and then design the entire curriculum, the subjects to be studied, the pedagogy to be adopted, internships to be taken, tours to be undertaken, connect with the society to be done. All that will become part of outcome-based education in the real sense of the word. I again repeat, challenges are great, particularly for a very large country like this, like India, where we have such a large number of students, and to define a separate outcome for each individual is a tough task. But then, if that is the ultimate education, which serves the interest of the students, we have to gear up for that. Friends, quality itself, which is one of the parameters of outcome-based education, is a bit of a subjective parameter. I don't think quality can be defined for a course or a university for all time to come. I believe quality has always been contextual. Quality has always been time variant, and we have to respect that. The computer which I'm using today to talk to you would have been impossible to have even 10 years ago. But today, if I use my 10-year-old computer, it will be called non-quality conformance. So quality does change from time to time. Quality does change from situation to situation. And therefore, when we define outcome-based education, it will automatically mean the system will have to be dynamic all the time. We should be open to variation in parameters from time to time, from situation to situation, from student to student, and that's the hallmark of outcome-based education. We have to design everything based on the sort of flow chart which we have created for each student who is a part of outcome-based education. Then only we'll be able to decide whether he needs more courses by way of lecture classes, by way of practical classes, by way of seminars, by way of internships, by way of case studies, by way of project-based. All that really means a connect with outcome-based education. If some student wishes to be a hardcore researcher, his flow chart will have to be different than some other student who wants to be a practitioner on the shop floor of an industry. His flow chart will have to be different. And therefore, outcome-based education will mandate not a very uniform, 100% uniform curriculum for everybody. There will have to be a lot of flexibility, and even the ratios, what can be delivered online, how much must be delivered face-to-face. The new terminology which has become a norm after COVID will again have to be a part of outcome-based education, because something can be delivered very effectively online, while something can be delivered much more effectively face-to-face. So outcome-based education will have to address that also. Friends, in our national education policy, we have even gone a step further. We have finished the distinction between classroom courses, curricular activities, co-curricular activities, and extracurricular activities. We do believe a student of engineering can opt for a course in music in lieu of a course in engineering. A student of physics can opt for a course in cricket or any sports instead of this, because we believe all that will lead to the outcomes defined by him or her in his or her flow chart. So all that flexibility will have to be maintained. For example, if a student wants to do a course on drug design, and he takes drug design as a major curriculum, which means a lot of chemistry, a lot of life science courses and all that. And if he wishes to study physics, then we must be able to tell him why physics is important for drug design. For example, the reflection coefficient of the drugs which he uses, refraction coefficient, transparency, opaqueness, all that will be determined by physical properties. And therefore, physics will be an essential part of drug design. We'll have to connect to the course of study that whether the medicine is in the powder form or a tablet form or injectable form, then what should be the compactness, how much time it can take to dissolve, how much time it can remain stable. All that will be not only chemistry, but physics also. This will have to be determined in outcome-based education and so on and so forth. Friends, I, as Chairman National Board of Accreditation in India, we are practicing outcome-based education. And I always say outcome-based education will really become a reality of life if every student, every teacher, every institution starts enjoying it. As long as outcome-based education remains a dictum, it will not come to that format which is required. Outcome-based education must become a joyful activity. Just as cycling, driving, horse riding, swimming, you enjoy these activities and you become more and more proficient in those activities. You are afraid of these activities and you never become proficient in those activities. Similarly, I very strongly believe that outcome-based education will become a real reality of life only and only when students and teachers start enjoying it as a part of their exercise rather than as a part of dictate which has been given by the university and so on and so forth. So my take to all institutions in India has been, and maybe connect to the word also, that outcome-based education be made a joyful activity. Students, whether he or she is making a robot in the laboratory or in the living room of his or her house, what difference does it make to us? Whether a student is studying a course in the library or in the hostel or in the classroom, as long as he or she is proficient in that, we have to define proficiency levels. That's a challenge. We have to define outcome levels very carefully. But having defined those, how do we achieve that is immaterial. Many people after COVID have been asking me, sir, how do you measure online education? I say, I don't care. As long as you measure the attributes which we have listed for an engineering graduate, how have you achieved those attributes is your concern, and I'm not bothered about it. And that's the spirit I believe has to be taken to give proper respect to outcome-based education, which is still a relatively new concept, but probably will be a question of survival of educational interests of everybody and survival of life planning by the youth for themselves, which is the reality of life. Friends, some degree of subjectivity will always come in when you go in for outcome-based education, because at times we will not be exactly mathematical, exactly logical, and that is where we are looking for spark in the student, where we are looking for his creativity, where we are looking of our innovative capabilities, where we are looking for communication skills. Yes, we do design rubrics, but at times it has to go beyond rubrics. And therefore, I also believe and would like to state on this important international platform that teacher empowerment will have to be a co-parameter with outcome-based education. Teacher will have to be empowered to ensure that outcome-based education is being done and also being assessed. Unless empowerment is there with the teacher mostly, and then with the student, with the institution, with everybody, outcome-based education will not become the reality. And finally, friends, because the title given to me as a practical perspective, I have been talking of only 2 sentences. Every teacher takes a class. After taking the class, he or she should frame a sentence in his or her mind. Why did I teach this? He or she must be able to connect the dots to the lecture which has been delivered today to one of the graduate attributes which has been listed in the format for the degree. Similarly, whenever you set an assessment by way of discussion, by way of an assignment, by way of quiz, by way of an examination, you must be able to answer yourself. Why are you asking the student to answer this question? And if you're asking the student to answer this question, what are you trying to test for? So my practical perspective is only 2. If in every class you are able to justify, why did I take the class today? And how does this class relate to the graduate attributes? Number 2, whenever you set up any assignment method, how did you choose this assignment method? Which graduate attribute you are testing? Once these 2 tests are practically done every point of time in the student's life by a teacher, by the administration, by all concerned, I think we would have achieved outcome-based education in its real perspective. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to be part of this great international forum, and wish it a great success. Thanks a lot.